Great. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. So making home safe. So now we are living at home, we're staying at home. And so it's very important to be able to make the home safe and know exactly how we can do that. So what we will cover today is some safety issues that can arise when someone is living with Alzheimer's or another dementia. And we'll learn about how to modify the home to make it safer, and also what products or what type of tips or hacks that you can use that can be available to you. So I'd like to start off just with a brief, like 2-minute overview video of what is Alzheimer's, so you can kind of get a good understanding of changes that are occurring in the brain. Basically, we know that there are different areas of thought that are affected with Alzheimer's. So there is judgment is affected, making good choices, reasoning, being able to talk to someone and make someone understand your point. They have lack of organization. So maybe they have trouble remembering how to get dressed in the proper order, or how to properly wash up. Also trouble, with memory, of course, right? Short-term memory gets affected. We also see trouble with not being able to perceive things, the five senses, trouble with perception of, information that they receive, and then how to interpret that information. We also see that they have trouble with things like abstraction. So abstract is really a higher level of thinking. So that can just be, even about relationships, even about time, right? Because many times you may say, oh, well, next week we have a doctor's appointment. And then they may see, oh, well, when's the doctor's appointment? Is it today? Is it today? And so they may have trouble remembering the concept of time or how long things are, right? The days of the week. So we do see that these changes occur gradually over a period of 8 to 12 plus years. We do see that now people are living much longer with Alzheimer's because we have much more advances in detection. We are able to detect it early enough. So that's why we always very much recommend that as soon as you have any kind of sign, warning sign of memory loss, please go see your doctor, because if it is Alzheimer's, the earlier you detect it, the better off you are. You can definitely help so it doesn't progress as aggressively through medication that you can take, and also you'll be able to plan better for the future. And so we also see that over time, we can see this brain here. The right side is the brain with Alzheimer's disease. And over time, the brain does start to shrink. It gets dry and very discolored and dark. And that is what we see being caused by the plaques and tangles in the brain. Essentially, there are some abnormal proteins that basically attack the neurons or the cells of the brain, and they disrupt the communication. So imagine if it's like, a tree falling over on the road, and then now you can't drive through that road to get to the other side. So when the brain cells are communicating with each other, if there's a disconnect, well, that communication is not going to get to the other brain cell or that other neuron. So therefore, it does start to deteriorate over time. And that's why we do see that slow and gradual memory loss, that loss of cognitive function, right? Because it's not just about memory. It's also about, all the other things I mentioned about judgment, reasoning, perception. So we do see that that can become a problem. So, but we need to know, how can we make the home safer, especially in times like these? Because now, many of us, especially in older age, we want to be able to live at home as long as we can, right? Because when we're at home, we're comfortable, we're in our happy place, right? We don't want to have to go and move and live somewhere that's foreign to us. So these are some great ways that we can live at home as long as we can in a safe way. And some strategies include changing the environment, changing the behavior, and changing your thinking. So you're thinking as the caregiver. So how to change a behavior using the IDEA strategy. So this IDEA strategy is an acronym for ID for identify, E for educate, and A for adapt. And I'll go over these three in more detail. So number one, ID for identify. So when we identify the behavior, what you're doing is you're naming and describing the behavior that's occurring. So what is it that's challenging, right? Be specific about what you see occurring, right? Are they misplacing items? Are they pacing around? Are they repeating themselves a lot? So where is this happening? You know, is it in the home? Is it only when you go outside or when you're at a doctor's appointment? How often is it occurring, right? Is it every day, weekly, and for how long? How long in that day is it occurring? You know, is it occurring for hours or just for a few minutes? And also you want to identify what was happening before the behavior started. And, you know, maybe there was some sort of trigger. And at what time of day do you see this happening? You know, is it in the evening or in the morning, afternoon? So that's what we mean by identifying, you know, what is the behavior that is occurring? Number two, E for educate. Learn about the behavior. So understand the cause of the behavior and why could it be occurring. So we do have some triggers that could cause certain behavior from occurring. So we have health triggers. So are they sick, right? Are they not feeling well? Maybe they're taking a new medication that's affecting them. Maybe it's an environmental trigger. So is it too noisy? Is it too hot or too cold? Are they in an unfamiliar place? Maybe it's an activity trigger. So is it that the activity is too hard for them? Are there too many steps for them and it's maybe causing them some confusion? Or maybe it's a communication trigger. So maybe it's hard for the person to keep up with a conversation. Maybe it's hard for them to speak, hard for them to verbalize what they're trying to say to you, which can be very frustrating. Then as you learn about the behavior, you know, you want to understand the meaning behind the behavior. Number three is A for adapt. So adapt or adjust the behavior. So we do know that caregivers, we are the only ones that can change, right? We can't expect our loved one with memory loss to change. And so the caregiver is the one that needs to change their approach, right? Take some changes, make some changes and take control of the situation. So possibly you may need to change the environment, right? Physically change the space of the room. You know, maybe there is a chair that is uncomfortable for them. Maybe you need to swap out the chair. You know, maybe it's too dark and they can't see very well because maybe their eyesight is not that good anymore. So maybe changing the environment by allowing the blinds to be open, the lights to be on, allowing enough light to come in so they're able to see better. Maybe you need to distract or redirect them, right? Maybe offering them, you know, an activity to do, or maybe something to eat, or maybe offering them to, you know, oh, let's go watch our favorite movie or a favorite TV show together, or, you know, why don't we go and take a short walk outside, you know, safely. And then maybe you want to address the cause. So maybe by keeping the activity simple, find meaningful activities that they enjoy to do. And of course, you can also speak more slowly and more calmly, so that way they don't get very anxious and excited if you're talking very anxiously and excited to them. And of course, try not to say too much at one time, because if you are giving them many instructions at one time, well, that can be very overwhelming and confusing for them. So slow it down and tell them one thing at a time. And lastly here, change your attitude, right? So caregivers can change. but the person with the disease cannot. So, I always like to tell my classes here that, you know, when your loved one is acting a certain way that can be very challenging, or they're saying something that just doesn't make sense and you're frustrated with them, try to remember it's not them anymore, right? It's the disease or it's the dementia making them act this way, right? It's not my mom, or it's not my sister or dad or my spouse, right? It's not them anymore, because really this disease has essentially taken over their brain, and now they don't have any really much control over how they're going to think or behave. So we really have to try not to take it personally, right? And realize that it's not them anymore. And I know for many families, that is probably one of the hardest things to accept and realize, is that, it's not really them anymore. So we'll talk about some common safety concerns. So we'll talk about getting lost, or what can be called wandering, accidents, falls, and medications. So getting lost and wandering. So this man here, his name was Kirk Booty, and his wife was actually, him and his wife were visiting the Los Angeles Museum, Los Angeles County Museum of Art. And they had to go to the bathroom. So they both went to their respective restrooms. And then as Kirk, the husband, got out of the restroom, he was looking for his wife, but could no longer find her. And according to Kirk, his wife never wandered away, because she was his shadow. Like, she always followed him around everywhere they went. And so to him, her getting lost was not really a concern, or he didn't think that it could happen to him. But unfortunately, on that day, when he went to look for her, he could no longer find her in the restroom. And they ended up going to the camera surveillance, the security in the museum, and they did see footage. If you can see that image on the poster on the left, that's actually the last image they have of her leaving the museum. And what they assume happened is that Nancy got out of the restroom, and for her, it wasn't that I'm wandering away. It was probably more so, I'm looking for my husband. Where is he? And unfortunately, that led to her wandering and leaving the museum and getting lost. And unfortunately, more than 60% of people with Alzheimer's disease will wander and get lost at some point in their lives. Um, you know, that doesn't necessarily mean they won't always be found, but it just means that they will wander and could get lost, and then they'll have to be found. However, if a person is not found within 24 hours, up to half of them will suffer a serious injury or death, unfortunately. And this is very hard for many families. And so because of Kirk Moody, he did everything he could to look for his wife. This was October 15th, 2017, I believe it was, 2016. And so he spent 2 years looking for her and did not stop until he found her. He went to homeless shelters, nursing homes, hospitals, but he just could not find her. And Nancy here, she was 55 years old and had early onset Alzheimer's when she wandered away. And 2 years after her disappearance, unfortunately, her remains were found on a hillside in a city over here in Sherman Oaks. And because of Nancy, that was Kirk Moody's inspiration to start LA Found, which is a countywide program for individuals using a tracking bracelet. So because of his advocacy, we were able to launch an LA Found program to help others be able to track their loved ones. So there are things that you can do also that may not necessarily be through the LA Found, but there is a Medic Alert Safe Return program. that is covered here by Medicare, I believe. And so this involves having some sort of identification on them, whether it's a necklace or a bracelet or some sort of tag or like a plaque. And this just has all of their emergency information, and it will notify the family members or their emergency contacts to make sure that the person is found and returned home. So this information, when they're on this program, their information and photo are faxed to local police. And also, if they are locally here in LA with us, we will also post their picture on all of our social media and their information. But another thing that you can also do to help prevent getting lost and wandering. So an important thing to keep on hand is a list of medications and allergies and doctors' names and numbers, and also a recent photo. And I know many people who are the primary caregivers for a loved one, they usually do have their medication maybe like in their phone on a list. And that is helpful, in case of an emergency. You never know what's going to happen. And, and it's important for the medical professionals or emergency response to be able to know all the medications that they're taking, in order to be able to provide them that proper care. And of course, a recent photo too, is very important for being able to find them if they do get lost. Identification and tracking devices. So I did mention the Medic Alert ID bracelet, having a state ID is also important, and maybe some tracking devices or a GPA wristband or LA Found tracking bracelets. So there are some places you can find like on Amazon or online that are little like tracking fobs, and they are connected through a Bluetooth. So I know many people actually have these fobs like on their key rings. So if they lose their keys, they can just open like an app on their phone and see, okay, where are my keys? Because I'm always losing them. So these little tracking fobs, you could actually place them in your loved one's belongings, like if they have a wallet or a purse, or say they have some kind of shoes that they like to wear often. Maybe you put it in like the tongue of their shoe, or maybe a pocket of their pants or a jacket. And again, because you never know what can happen. So being able to know where they are in the event that they do get lost is very important and can be very life-saving, as we saw in the unfortunate ending of Kirk Moody and his wife. Although I'm sure him and his family felt a sense of closure, at least knowing that they knew what happened to his wife. Then some home modifications that you can do in your home. So having alarms, maybe on the door, like a door alarm or bells or motion detectors. Sometimes, you can have, when the door opens, it kind of does like a ding. Or maybe if you have a rug or some sort of mat by the door, like when it's stepped on, it can make some sort of buzz noise. Of course, you want to be able to secure the doors and with blocks or even maybe stop signs. Sometimes if your loved one can still perceive signs and understand the meaning of signs, if you have a stop sign, then they'll think, oh, that's stop, I can't move forward beyond that. Or also a door cover. So they actually do this in memory care facilities, because since it is a locked facility with the code, on the inside of the door, they usually have a decal sticker on the door that can look like books on a bookshelf, just a big sticker of books on a bookshelf, and it will give that illusion that it's a bookshelf. So when they're walking by and they see it, they may not think that, oh, that's a door where I can leave. So that could be something that you could do in your home if you do find that your loved one is having some trouble with wandering and trying to leave the home. And of course, secure the outside as well, the yard with a lock, or maybe having a gate at your stairs. And if you really need to go a little bit more thorough, hiding shoes or their keys, purse, coats, or hats. to kind of prohibit that they, have those things to leave the home. So next we'll talk about having abstinence in the home. So abstinence is another big risk factor because people with Alzheimer's may have trouble knowing what is now dangerous that they may have not that may have not been before. So especially because judgment is impaired. So judgment is what we think about, what making good decisions and bad decisions, right? Is it a good idea to put a fork in a working toaster oven? Probably not. Is it a good idea to put aluminum foil in the microwave? Probably not. But these are things that someone with Alzheimer's may forget because they are starting to lack good judgment. So they may forget that these are things that are dangerous. So, you have to consider, are they still able to safely use kitchen appliances, like the microwave, a blender, or a stove? They may need supervision now, or are they leaving the gas stove on? Are they undercooking food, right? Or overcooking. They're not cooking food properly anymore in a safe way, also to ingest safely as well if it's undercooked especially. So this can be especially hard for those who enjoy cooking as a hobby, especially here in the kitchen example. So we do see that there are ways, you may need to supervise them. You may need to do it with them. Offering it as a activity that you can do together is a good idea to help to prevent it, so it's not like, oh, you can't do things anymore, so I'm going to step in and do it for you, and so you just go and sit down. Well, no, because we still want to give them a sense of independence and sense that they can still do things for themselves, because that is something that you want to allow. Even as the disease progresses, you still want to try to encourage their independence as much as possible and allow them to still be able to make some choices, as best as they can. So maybe instead of just trying to take over in the kitchen, maybe just if you notice that they can no longer cook just by themselves, why don't you say, oh, like, why don't we do this together? I would love for you to show me how to cook this dish. It's so good and I want to learn. So I would love to do it together. So offering to do it as an activity, the two of you, is a great time to spend time together, to bond, and just to have a good time, in the kitchen, sharing something that they may love to do. But what you can do, though, if you do find that, it is getting to be a bit unsafe for them, you definitely want to lock away any knives. Maybe you want to put them in a cabinet that's locked, especially, with guns as well. That can be very dangerous because if they're not using good judgment, and or maybe they forget how to even use a gun, or so that could be very it could be dangerous for them, and we definitely don't want that to be a very bad situation. So just being mindful of making sure that things are put away in a safe place. So some tips here for accidents in the kitchen. You could potentially use anti-scalding devices on faucets. So, this is to prevent the water from getting extremely hot, because another thing is that their perception is not that good. And their perception has to do, again, with the five senses, which does include touch. So if they're washing dishes or washing their hands, and it's taking them a while for them to sense that the water is very hot, well, they could end up burning themselves. So having anti-scalding devices on faucets helps for the water to not get extremely hot. Then having auto stove turn-off devices to turn off the stove in the event that you notice that they are leaving the gas on. You could even choose to remove the stove knobs completely. And if you find that using your normal dinnerware or glasses is now becoming a problem. Maybe you're noticing dishes are being broken, or they're not able to really grab things anymore very good with their dexterity. Maybe opting to use plastic eating and drinkware rather than glass or ceramic. And then throughout the house, throughout the house, it's important to have sturdy furniture. You don't want to have chairs with wheels, in the event that they go try to sit down and then, they wheel away and now they fall and get a broken hip. And that's probably the last thing you want to have happen. So just being mindful of that too. So, if you do have chairs with wheels, making sure that you're there, you're watching over them, you're helping them sitting down, you're having sturdy tables as well. Because, especially if they're going to be getting up from a chair, or if it's from the kitchen, they may use that table to kind of help push themselves up. Locking away sharp items, like knives, if needed, or cleaning supplies as well. If maybe you'll need to put kind of those safety locks in the cabinets, the ones where if you have to open it, you have to push down a little plastic on the in the cabinet. So that way it would be more challenging for them to open it. And you don't want them to confuse cleaning supplies with another item, cleaning supplies with something that's supposed to be for cleaning your face, right? You don't want them to put something toxic on their face or on their skin. And locking kitchen and bathroom doors. Again, if you think that you need to take this measure, this would probably be a good idea if you do feel it's necessary for you and your family. For visuals, so decals. So I did mention how putting decals on doors so they don't want to leave the door, but maybe also putting decals or stickers on glass doors, maybe like on the sliding door. If their perception's not that good and they're not noticing that it's a glass door, well, we don't want them to run into it and bang their head. So putting some sort of stickers on the glass door could help to give them that contrast that, oh, there is something there. And using contrasting colors to increase visibility of items also, such as on stairs or handrails. So, maybe having a lighter color handrail or a doorknob, so that way there is a distinction and they're able to safely grab those items to help them, walk up the stairs, or help them to even like get in the tub, or knowing where's a doorknob, like in the room or bathrooms, so they know, okay, this is how I'll get into this room. And another thing too, like around the house is, I know sometimes people like to have decorative items. So maybe like decorative fruit. And that is obviously not made for eating. So that could maybe be confusing, right? If your loved one sees this fruit in a bowl, but it's obviously fake, and then if they're trying to, eat it, again, that could be a little confusing. So trying to minimize things that could be overly confusing for them is definitely a good idea. This next area here is talking about falls. So falls are another risk factor because physical weakness and poor balance, as Alzheimer's progresses, that is affected. They become weaker and have more poor balance. And also the amount of exercise they're able to do is now much more limited because their muscles are weaker, their balance is not as good. So, and they also can have problems with vision and problems with perception, right? Another thing, right? If they see a handrail and they think that it's closer to them than it really is, perception is a little off. Well, they may try to grab it and thinking they're grabbing for it, but they're really not, and then they could fall because their perception was not accurate. So they were reaching for something that was actually further away. So the brain does control our ability to process and understand the purpose of physical objects and cues. So, for example, having a rug, if you have a rug, specifically if it's like a black or a dark colored rug, that can look like a black hole for someone with Alzheimer's disease. And so for them, if they see that and think of it, oh, it's a hole, then they may not want to step over it. So that could be a trick or a hack to use for, a front door if you find that they are wandering away, maybe putting a dark rug to give that illusion, right? So, and another reason people could fall as well is maybe there are side effects to medication. And again, if you're noticing that falls are occurring because of side effects to medication that are possibly causing more confusion, definitely consult with your doctor right away, because that should not be happening. So consulting with your doctor to help them switch that medication can happen. Also having falls because maybe they're tired as well, right? They may just need a rest, or even especially getting in and out of the shower. Shower is actually, bathing and showering is another thing that can be very challenging to get your loved one to do. And part of the reason why is that maybe they are just genuinely afraid of falling. So what can you do in that case in the shower? You can install handrails in the tub or shower equipment or other type of equipment. And again, things that are covered through a Medicare, like a shower chair, handrails on the tub, or handrails there like on the walls to help them get in and out. Also, just to help them feel more comfortable, help them feel safer, and you being able to offer them that sense of comfort as well, knowing that they are in a safe environment. Some fall prevention tips in the home: in rails in the bathroom, as we saw, or on the stairs, or on the bed too, as well, if they need help. If they need to, you need to prevent them from falling off the bed. Rubber-based non-slip rugs, especially in the shower. Have rugs in your home, making sure that the rugs don't slip, right? If they do, buying new ones, or even buying some kind of some sort of adhesive that you can stick on the bottom that helps so it doesn't slip. And removing floor clutter, right? Such as shoes, boxes, or cords, especially with cords. You don't want to have a lot of clutter or things that they could trip over. So making sure it's a clean, clutter-free, organized home. So that way they are not more at risk of tripping over something and falling and hurting themselves. Make sure there's good lighting in the home as well. Light switches are available. Maybe you need to install night lights in their home, or maybe even having automatic lights, automatic lamps that get turned on with a timer to allow for plenty of light, so they are not left in the dark, which darkness can increase falls for them. And for the person, making sure that their clothing, fits them properly. It's not too baggy, because we do notice that over time, they usually end up losing weight. And it's just because usually they are, they forget to eat, or they just don't have a desire to eat. And so we do see that weight loss is something that can happen. So making sure they have fitting clothes, as the disease progresses. Good sturdy shoes, especially if they're going to be out taking a walk. And trying to maintain regularly to strengthen their legs. So even if it's just a short walk around your home, just something to kind of get that strength in their legs, or even in the home. If you can't go outside, just a little bit in your home can help as well. And for the caregivers, allow plenty of time for activities. If you know that something's going to take a while and maybe you don't have time, push it for another day when you can take the time and not rush them. Because if they're feeling rushed, chances are they're going to feel anxious, frustrated, and they're probably going to not try to decline and refuse any kind of care that you're trying to provide for them. And I know many people have trouble with getting their loved one to bathe. Sometimes making the shower a very relaxing experience for them can encourage them to get into that shower or bath. Maybe lighting some candles, flameless or flame, your preference, or some scent, or playing some relaxing music for them. Maybe just having some of their favorite items in their bathroom to encourage them to enter this very warm and welcoming environment. And our last risk factor here is on medication. So for medications, we do know that it can be a risk factor because, again, their memory loss is affected. So they could either forget that they have already taken their medication, or they may not take it multiple times and run the risk of getting, medication poisoning, getting sick. And so that could garner a visit to the emergency room. So again, trying to help them with the medication can be very helpful, or maybe you need to start managing the medication for them. So what can you do? Again, you can talk with your doctor if you are having challenges with having them take the medication. Maybe they're having a hard time swallowing pills. Maybe you need to, crush them. Maybe you need to cut them in half or get them in liquid form. Or maybe you need to change the medication. Maybe the medicine that they're taking is having adverse side effects that are not good for them. Some safety tips that you can try for managing medication is keeping an organized list of the medicine, right? Keeping it updated. Keep local poison control center and the emergency room number at hands. And manage their medication, maybe using a pill box, maybe the days of the week, AM, PM, or another method for organizing their medicine. You may need to keep their medication in original containers and keep them in a safe, locked place. So imagine it's an emergency and you need to evacuate your house, right? Whether if it's, for a fire, or I know on the other side, like for hurricanes or tornadoes. So having all the pills in their original containers and in a locked, and maybe in a bag, so it's all in one place. So okay, we got to leave the house. We're gonna just grab this this bag that's filled with all their medication, and you have that. So it's just one quick grab and in the bag. And rather than opening the medicine cabinet and looking at all the medication and be like, oh my gosh, which one do I need to grab? Reading the labels, well, that will take you a lot more time. And in the event of an emergency, you may not grab all the correct medication. So yes, organizing them into a pill box, but again, in the pill box, you're usually just doing, for each of the day. So you'll still have the extra in the original container. And for the caregiver, keeping a regular schedule for taking medication. Having a regular schedule helps also your loved one to know that routine and kind of feel comfortable and know that, okay, this is part of my daily routine. I know that I need to take this medication. And usually, even through memory loss, sometimes having that routine, because it's habitual, they may still remember. Using simple words, giving clear instruction in short sentences, right? Allowing them plenty of time to process the information that you're telling them, and allowing them plenty of time to take the medication. That's another thing that you don't want to rush them, right? Allow plenty of time and maybe encourage them to offer something to do after. Say, here, it's time to take your medication for the day. And then after, let's go take a walk, or after, let's put on your favorite movie or TV show, right? Encouraging an activity that they can do after so they have something to look forward to. And we know that Alzheimer's is tough, so let's face it together. So you can call our helpline at any time to get support, get more information about our classes, get connected with a care counselor to help with one-on-one care planning. We do offer virtual support groups Monday through Friday at various different times. And for the more education classes like the one I'm offering here, and volunteering and fundraising. We're actually, since we're all virtual now, we're not doing our normal walk in person. So we are actually doing a virtual walk that is starting now. You can join at any time and do this virtual walk. And then we'll culminate everything on October 10th at 10 a.m. And you can look at our website there, alzheimersla.org. That's also where you can find more of the list of classes. And our helpline number is listed here, 844-HELP-ALZ. And numerically, that's 844-435-7259. And you can always visit alzheimersla.org. And of course, on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn.